It's often said that nothing good happens after midnight. Most people are asleep, streets are empty, houses fall silent. Yet some people claim that the strangest and most terrifying experiences of their lives began when the clock struck 12. The 3 stories you're about to hear come from individuals who insist these events actually happened. Whether you believe them or not, each account left the people involved searching for answers they never found. Before we begin, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and prepare yourself for 3 unsettling true horror stories that happened after midnight. In 2018, a college student named Ryan spent a week at his grandparents' old farmhouse while they were away visiting relatives. The house sat alone, at the edge of a rural town. It was over 100 years old and had a reputation among family members for being creepy, though nobody could explain exactly why. The first few nights were uneventful. Ryan spent his evenings watching movies and studying before heading to bed around midnight. But on the 4th night, things changed. At approximately 12:30 a.m., he was lying in bed scrolling through his phone when he heard something above him. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. At first, he assumed it was the house settling. Old homes make strange noises all the time. But these sounds were different. They moved across the floor, one step, then another, someone, or something, seemed to be walking around upstairs. Ryan sat up. His grandparents didn't have pets, and he knew nobody else was supposed to be in the house. The footsteps continued for nearly a minute before suddenly stopping. The silence that followed felt even worse. The next morning, Ryan searched the entire 2nd floor. Nothing appeared unusual. No open windows, no signs of intrusion, no explanation. The following night, the footsteps returned. Again, shortly after midnight. This time they lasted longer, back and forth, as if someone was pacing. Ryan grabbed a flashlight and slowly climbed the stairs. His heart pounded in his chest. When he reached the 2nd floor, the footsteps immediately stopped. Every room was empty. The attic door remained locked. There was nobody there. For the next several nights, the same thing happened. Always after midnight, always upstairs. Then came the final night. At around 1 a.m., Ryan heard the familiar footsteps begin. Only this time they sounded different. Closer. Instead of moving around upstairs, they seemed to be heading toward the staircase. Ryan listened in horror as the steps slowly descended, one at a time. The sound continued until it reached the hallway outside his bedroom. Then it stopped, directly outside his door. Ryan stared at the handle, waiting, listening. For almost 30 seconds, there was complete silence. Then, bang! A deafening crash erupted from upstairs. Ryan jumped from his bed and ran outside. The entire 2nd floor was empty, again. The next morning, before leaving, Ryan decided to explore the attic. Inside, he found several old boxes filled with photographs. As he flipped through them, one image caught his attention. It showed a man standing on the farmhouse staircase. On the back was a handwritten note. Uncle Thomas, 1947. When Ryan later showed the photo to his grandmother, she became pale. According to family stories, Thomas had died unexpectedly inside the house decades earlier, and his bedroom had been located directly above the room where Ryan had been sleeping. To this day, Ryan refuses to spend another night in that farmhouse. Sarah worked late shifts at a restaurant in a busy city. One rainy evening, her shift ended later than expected. By the time she reached the station, she had missed her usual ride home. The last bus of the night arrived shortly after midnight. Relieved, she stepped aboard. The vehicle was nearly empty. Only a few passengers sat scattered throughout the cabin. Sarah chose a seat near the middle. As the bus pulled away, she noticed a man sitting near the back. He wore dark clothing and kept his head lowered. Something about him felt strange, but she ignored it. Several stops later, Sarah glanced toward the back again. The man appeared closer. She frowned. Maybe he had changed seats. The bus continued through the empty streets. 10 minutes later, she looked again. The man was now only a few rows away, still silent, still staring downward. Sarah felt uneasy. She hadn't seen him move. Trying to calm herself, she focused on her phone. Eventually, curiosity got the better of her. She looked up once more. The man was sitting directly behind her. Her stomach dropped. Sarah immediately stood and walked toward the driver. Trying not to sound frightened, she asked, "Excuse me, has that guy been acting strange?" The driver looked confused. What guy? The man sitting behind me. The driver checked the mirror, then looked back at Sarah. His expression changed. Miss, he paused. You're the only passenger on this bus. Sarah felt her blood run cold. She turned around. The seat behind her was empty. Every nearby seat was empty. There was nobody there. At the next stop, she rushed off the bus and called a friend to pick her up. The following day, Sarah contacted the transit company and requested security footage. Several weeks later, she received a response. The footage showed Sarah boarding the bus alone, sitting alone, moving to different seats alone. At no point did another passenger appear near her. Sarah has never taken the last bus home again. Michael worked overnight shifts at a security company. One weekend, he finally had a night off. Around 2:08 a.m., he was sitting in his apartment watching television when he heard something unusual, a whisper. At first it was so faint he thought he imagined it. Then he heard it again, a voice calling his name. Michael! He muted the television. Silence. A few moments later, Michael! The whisper seemed to come from the hallway outside his apartment door. Assuming it was a neighbor playing a prank, Michael ignored it, but the voice continued. Every few minutes, always the same whisper, always his name. By 2:30 a.m., he was becoming genuinely frightened. He approached the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No people, no movement, nothing. Then the whisper came again, this time louder, much louder. Michael! He jumped back. The voice had sounded as if it were standing directly outside. Heart racing, he opened the door. The hallway was completely deserted. The elevator sat motionless. The stairwell door remained closed. Nobody was there. Michael locked the door and returned to his living room. A few minutes later, his phone vibrated. He had received a voicemail. The timestamp read 2:37 a.m. Confused, he pressed play. Static filled the speaker. Then came a familiar sound, a whisper. His own name, Michael. The recording ended. Terrified, he checked the number. There wasn't one. The caller information was blank. The next morning, Michael contacted building management. Security cameras showed an empty hallway throughout the night. Nobody had approached his apartment. Nobody had entered his floor. No explanation existed for the whisper. Years later, Michael still keeps the voicemail saved on an old phone. He says listening to it now sends chills down his spine because the voice doesn't sound human. 3 stories, 3 encounters, and 3 mysteries that remain unexplained. Were these experiences paranormal, coincidences, or simply tricks of the mind? Nobody knows for certain. But for the people who lived through them, the fear was very real. Which story disturbed you the most? The footsteps upstairs, the last bus home, or the voice from the hallway? Let us know in the comments. And remember, if you hear something strange after midnight, you might want to pretend you didn't.
Twelfths for